Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Friday Preview. It's Week 12 in the EFL, and the business end of the season is just around the corner. And we, here in the EFL media team, will cover every single game that's going on tomorrow afternoon with some thorough, in-depth analysis. Hold on to your hats. We're about to take you on a bit of a journey. I'm Ben Waterworth, and joining me to do that is the man who milks cows for a living. He's on here every Friday Preview. It's a very good afternoon to Peter Baird.
Yeah, my boss doesn't really like the fact that I get out of work on a Friday afternoon to come and do the Friday Preview, but I love it. Nothing better than sit down and digest a weekend's action on a Friday afternoon. And
he was so good last week that we've got him back to have a look at all the games around the Eastern Football League. Good afternoon to Daniel Cencic.
Very good afternoon to you, Ben, and to Peter Baird. Always a pleasure.
Let's start by having a look at Division 4, and the first game we're going to have a look at, Dan, is Surrey Park, a struggling Surrey Park, taking on Forest Hill, who are trying to push into that top 5.
It shapes as a huge clash for the Zebras. There's a logjam between 7th and 4th on the Division 4 ladder with 5 wins for the season, and a win here gives Forest Hill every opportunity to play in the finals. The Shoulders boys have been in great form this season, as has Michael Cardamone, who's kicked 23 goals from 10 matches, and they all pose as players that can really trouble the Surrey Park side. Surrey Park are still to win a game this season, and I'm with him that they'll win a game in 2012, but I don't think it'll be this week. Forest Hill by about 5 goals.
2 words, Dan. Forest Hill. Now, Peter Baird is very excited about this next game because he has been on the Sylvan bandwagon for who knows how long, and they get a great opportunity this Saturday to test themselves against the very best, the Basin.
Well, the Basin this year, Ben, have proven that they are the yardstick of Division 4. But I don't know, I've just got a feeling that Sylvan might be the team that might challenge them along with South Belgrave. I went up and had a look at Sylvan play the Eastern Lions at home a few weeks ago, and they were very, very impressive. I came away thinking to myself that perhaps they've got the mix that might be able to take it right up to teams like South Belgrave and the Basin. They've got those bigger body midfielders going through the middle, guys like Adam Newing and Mark Cullen. They've got a fantastic small brigade led by Andrew Volpetti and Ben Strawhair, Scott Steghouse to throw in there as well. Their back line is so solid with guys like Rhett Newell, who's been a fantastic acquisition for the club this year, and up forward, who can deny Ash Froud. Maybe Sylvan have that mix. You'd be a crazy man to tip against the Basin. They've just gone from strength to strength this year. They've kicked nearly 300 points more than any other team in Division 3. They would have to be the favourites, but if you're looking for an outsider this round, don't write off Sylvan.
You just said you were a crazy man if you tipped against the Basin, and I think you're going to do that, Pete. So I'm calling you a crazy man because you look at the Basin, they're the best attacking team and the best defensive team in the competition. I don't care how good Sylvan is, the Basin will win tomorrow. The next game we're going to have a look at is Kilsyth taking on Canterbury out there at Pink's Reserve. A big game for these two clubs, Dan, as they try and salvage 4 points as we head towards the end of the season.
Yeah, 10th versus 9th on the Division 4 ladder, and 2 very evenly matched sides, only separated by less than 1% on the ladder. It's anyone's game, and it's one that both teams will see as a bit of a consolation prize for 2012. Although neither can make the finals, there's still a lot to gain out of the season by getting the most out of your side and building for the 2013 season. And that's one of the main objectives from here on in, to build that winning culture that we see with the Basin and South Belgrave this year. The game's going to be a real toss of the coin, but there's some real pivotal plays in the Kilsyth lineup. I'm talking about Jamie Ockwell and Jordan Channell. Jamie Ockwell, of course, 5 matches, 13 goals. Jordan Channell, 10 matches, 13 goals as well. And they've both been named in the best a little bit too. It's a real toss of the coin, but I'm going to go for Kilsyth at an upset by the barest of margins.
Big day for the Canterbury Football Club tomorrow. Of course, they'll be under a new coach after Tony Rowe and the club parted ways during the week. Watch out for a guy called Levi King. He's a young kid who's been named in the best 6 times for the Cobras this year. He's a player to watch. I don't know. I've got a feeling about Canterbury. Under a new coach, I think they'll be able to get the chocolates tomorrow. Possibly game of the round in Division 4, arguably, Peter Baird, is Eastern Lions taking on Ferntree Gully Eagles. If these two teams want to play in September this year, they've got to win this game.
They certainly do. The Eastern Lions were very impressive at the start of the year. They were sitting in 3rd position of the ladder about 3 weeks ago. They've dropped 3 on the trot, and in that same period, it corresponds to when one of their leading players, Darren Murphy, has been absent with appendicitis. He's a huge loss for the Eastern Lions team, and with him not there, that's when their form has fallen away. It's left a little bit too much to do for some of the guys around the footy club that have been there for a while but lead this footy club. Guys like Jamie Devonish, and one of my favourites, Benny Waterworth in Division before. Steve Sigismundi.
Oh, yes.
He's hard and he's tough. He's going to have to lift this week to try and match it with Ferntree Gully. Paul Hagar's been a great acquisition for them this year. He's kicked 23 goals for the year. He's been ably aided by one of the veterans of the competition, Paul Giannopoulos. He's been great, as has Ricky Aitken, Trent Harrop, and Ben Rawlings, who's been fantastic for them as well. This is a crunch game, as you said. It's 5th versus 6th on the Division 4 ladder. A spot inside that top 5 beckons for the team that wins this game. Come 5 p.m. on Saturday afternoon, I think it's Ferntree Gully that'll be going away with the win.
The Lions and the Eagles have been pretty hard to read throughout the 2012 season. You never know what you're going to get. I just think over the past couple of weeks, the Eastern Lions have dropped off and Ferntree Gully Eagles have just come forward that little bit. After that victory against Surrey Park last weekend, they'll be confident. The Eagles for mine. The final game we're going to have a look at in Division 4 is the New Boys on the block. Park Orchards taking on South Belgrave out there at Domini Reserve, Dan.
8 versus 2 on the ladder this week, and both teams coming off wins last week, of course, but they've both had very different records this season and very different seasons to date. Park Orchards, while they have been impressive in some matches and maybe even exceeded some of our expectations this year and what we thought they were going to achieve, the games against the top sides have been mostly blowouts. In particular, I'm talking about the round 9 game where they went down to the Basin by 177 points. And we saw the South Belgrave game against the Basin and the lead changed about 3 or so times in the last 5 minutes. So on that basis, if Park Orchards struggled against the Bears, then they'll typically struggle against the side in South Belgrave who was unlucky not to be in front when the final siren sounded against the Basin. We're talking about players like Lucas Appleby, who's in absolutely blistering form this season, 51 goals to date. From 10 matches. And of course, David Bilston's in fantastic form as well, being named in the best 5 times. Going to go for South Belgrave by 10 goals.
I know Park Orchards have been in pretty impressive form over the past fortnight. They've won their past 2 games, but they'll run into a South Belgrave side who'll be keen for a big victory tomorrow. I'm going for the Saints. Division 4 done and dusted. 5 fantastic games I'm sure you'll see out there in the Eastern Football League venues tomorrow, but 6 even better games out in Division 3 tomorrow. And the first one we're going to have a look at is the White Horse Pioneers taking on Templestowe at White Horse Reserve. They've only played once at White Horse Reserve this year, Peter Baird. I don't think it'll matter though because the Templestowe Football Club are in good form.
They're probably one of the hottest teams in Division 3 at the moment, them and the Glen Waverley Hawks. They were very impressive, disposing of Heathmont last week by 39 points to move into 3rd position on the ladder. The White Horse Pioneers, they went down in a very disappointing performance by 70 points to Warrandyte. So this one here is a contrast with 2 teams bringing vastly different form lines into this game. It's very hard to resist the form of Templestowe when you're looking for a tip. Paul Eccles has kicked 42 goals for the year. Kane Magames, a big bag last week. He's been great for them. Alistair Quinn's been a super pickup, having played with the White Horse Pioneers last year, the team they come up against this week, so that's going to be an interesting situation for him. And Troy Resentless, he's been around the club for a long time. He's had a blistering year this year, named in their best 6 times. This one here, Ben, has a propensity to be a bit of a blowout. Unfortunately for the White Horse Pioneers, I think Templestowe might be looking for a bit of a percentage booster in this game, and I think this one might get nasty, the Dockers for mine.
The Pioneers were pretty disappointing against Warrandyte last weekend. They would have liked to have put in a much better performance, so not good signs there for the Pioneers, and they run into a very confident Templestowe side. I love the form of Kane Magames as well. He's kicking goals in a different role this season, so when he's in that kind of form, when Resentless is in that kind of form, this one could get ugly. Templestowe by plenty. Dan, we had a look at Wantirna South last weekend. They were pretty impressive against Churnside Park, and they've got a big game tomorrow against Warrandyte, who are coming off a big victory over the White Horse Pioneers last weekend.
Yeah, last week the Devils did exactly what they needed to do and defeat Churnside Park to keep their season well and truly alive. They've been talked up as potential finalists on the back of some fantastic form, and the win against North Ringwood showed the EFL world just what they're capable of achieving. But Owen's been in great form, kicking 5 goals last week, and Greg continues to really impress by feeding the ball out of the packs to runners like Taylor Leggett, who created options further up the field. Harkness has also been solid for them down back, alongside Freeman, whose 2nd, 3rd and 4th efforts to the contest last week gave the Devils many opportunities on the rebound. Warrandyte have improved the last few weeks. They've won 2 in a row, but Wantirna South are just a class above them at the moment on current form and are playing some great team footy. The Devils will win this one by about 30 points.
Couldn't agree with you more, Dan. The Devils just seem that class above Warrandyte. We heard Churnside Park coach Brett Davidson really rate Warrandyte on EFL game day last weekend, saying they could possibly cause a few upsets towards the end of the season, but they won't cause an upset this weekend because Wantirna South are coming and they could potentially play Division 3 finals this year. The Devils Eagles for mine. Peter Baird, you anointed Mitcham at the start of the year. They were supposed to be the form team of Division 3, but what the heck has happened? They run into the form team of Division 3, the Glen Waverley Hawks, tomorrow.
I think everyone around the EFL community knows I've got a soft spot for both these clubs. Unfortunately, Hawks have a feather flock together. I'm going to stick with the Glen Waverley Hawks in this one. Glen Waverley Hawks have won 7 on the trot now. They're equal ladder leaders with North Ringwood, having claimed their biggest scalp in the Saints last week. That's a huge step up for a club that's made the transition up to Division 3 from Division 4 without winning a flag. This is a huge game for them. They can't afford to drop a game against a club like Mitcham that have been probably the best of the rest in Division 3 for the last couple of years. The Tigers, they jumped out of the blocks really well at the start of the year. They've fallen away, and I think a lot of that's been their inability to kick a winning score in games. If we even have a look as recently as last week, they could only manage 6 goals for the game. The week before, only 1 till half-time. It's been the Achilles heel of Mitcham this year, and they come up against a side that just loves kicking goals themselves. The Glen Waverley Hawks love playing a free-flowing game. They run hard through the middle. They've got power forward in Matthew Carnelli, and Andrew has a party when he needs to. I think Ben Law in the ruck's going to have his hands full with Danny Kenor from the Glen Waverley Hawks. I just see this one here as the Hawks' chance to really affirm their spot at that top of that Division 3 ladder along with North Ringwood. I can't see the Hawks dropping this one, and I think they'll win by plenty.
The Tigers have lost 3 of their past 4 games. It certainly hasn't been a good past month for the Mitcham Football Club, but it's been a fantastic past couple of months for Glen Waverley Hawks, and I think that ride will continue tomorrow with quite a comfortable victory. First versus last in Division 3 tomorrow, Dan. North Ringwood taking on Coldstream at Quamby. North Ringwood coming off a loss. I'm nervy about this one. The Saints should get this one by plenty.
Yeah, both sides' track records speak for themselves so far this season. One side looks like they'll be playing deep into September, and the other side looks just to be playing for pride at the moment. And the unfortunate thing for Coldstream is they've struck North Ringwood at a very, very bad time. Of course, coming off 2 losses in a row, especially their 44-point loss to the Glen Waverley Hawks last week. And we want to get on with things again with a positive, convincing win. North Ringwood have too many good players in good form this season, and with last season's disappointment still burning deep amongst many of the group, they must pick themselves up and take all before them. Barrett and De Kaiser are in fantastic form with 45 goals between them each. North Ringwood too strong, and they're a side with a vengeance. North Ringwood by about 65 points.
We know that Matty Price is one of the best Eastern Football League players. He has one of the best footy brains going around. We love the pig. Johnny Pignataro always is able to kick a few goals, but North Ringwood, as you said, Dan, Coldstream are running into them at a very bad time. Saints by plenty. Don't know about you, Pete, but I'm a huge fan of Ringwood and how they're going about their business. They're snuck into the top 5 for the first time in a while, and they come up against a Churnside Park team that's pretty badly out of form.
Yeah, Churnside Park have now lost 5 in a row. They haven't won since May, and that's a long time in Eastern Football League terms. They've come up against a Ringwood team, as you said, that are starting to get their act together. You have a look at Trent Farmer. He kicked 6 goals last week for them, and James Katsiavos kicked 7. That's huge firepower they've got up forward. Luke Davis has been named in their best 8 times. Andrew Waddle 6, as well as Tim Burmeister. They're just starting to play together as a team. They love playing on the wide open expanses of Jubilee Park, where they will meet Churnside Park this week. The problem for Brett Davidson this year has been inconsistency from his playing group. Now, that doesn't just relate to inconsistency in performance for the team, but in players as well. Not one player from the Churnside Park Football Club this year has been named in their best in more than half of their games. That's a stat that I haven't been able to find in any other club in the Eastern Football League. They are struggling to get players performing week in, week out, and that's been a real problem for the Churnside Park Panthers this year. Ringwood are going to be too strong out at Jubilee Park, and I'm tipping the Redbacks to get up.
Really like the looks of the Redbacks over the past couple of weeks. They are genuine finals contenders in Division 3 this season. They'll get a good victory tomorrow. And there's no doubt that Heathmont and Baronia is the game of the round in Division 3 tomorrow. Heathmont will be keen to get back inside that top 5 after being bundled out by Ringwood last weekend. But Baronia, testing time for them tomorrow, Dan.
6 versus 4th, and it shapes as an almost season-defining game for Heathmont. Their last couple of weeks versus Templestowe and Whitehorse Pioneers have been very disappointing. But tomorrow presents itself with a chance to leapfrog Ringwood into 5th position on the ladder and stay in the hunt for finals action. But a big factor to consider is last time, of course, Baronia did a fantastic job holding off Heathmont's key forwards in Odermatt and Sheen, and Baronia need to really emulate that form to go a long way to getting the result thereafter. I think it'll be won and lost in the forward lines. Two sides very evenly matched, Baronia kicking a total of 950 points this season and Heathmont 946. The defence of Baronia, though, has been solid so far this season. Players like Moore, McNamara, the Mackenzies and McKernan have been somewhat unsung heroes, but players who can do a number on very handy opposition forward lines. The midfield should break even, but Baronia's defence look to prove the difference and will be too classy. I think Baronia by about 12 points.
Been mentioning it a number of times this year, Dan, and you mentioned it just then. Baronia's defence is fantastic. Very, very solid back six. And I think they'll be able to stop the likes of Odermatt and Sheen tomorrow. Baronia for mine. Division 3 is one of the closest divisions in the Eastern Football League we've seen for quite some time. And there should be 6 fantastic games tomorrow. And there should be 5 fantastic games in Division 2 as well. And we're going to have a look at the big game between Doncaster and your boys, Roval, Peter Baird.
Well, Roval were very, very impressive last week, Ben Waterworth. They took on the ladder leader in Division 2 in Montrose and came away with a 21-point victory. That scoreline was probably flattering to Montrose. Roval were dominant against them all day. For those people down at Roval, they were clearly the better side on the day. This game shapes up, though, as probably featuring 2 of the most attacking midfielders you would find in Division 2. Chris Anarkis from Doncaster, a midfielder that's kicked 19 goals for the year, and Matt Stanley from Roval, who's kicked 22 for the Hawks. So it's going to be a great midfield battle, and the result may hinge on which team can shut down that opposition player a little better. I just think Roval have a little bit more versatility at the moment. We've seen Paul Minot throw players forward and back this year. The Hawks probably have that extra card up their sleeve. Doncaster have been very credible stepping up to Division 2, but they've only got the 2 wins for the year to show for it. I just think, even though this one's at Shram's Reserve, which traditionally hasn't been a happy hunting ground for the Hawks, Roval should come away with a quite impressive win.
It's a very delicious matchup between Chris Anarkis and Matty Stanley. Really like how those guys are going about their business, but you can't go past Roval, particularly after their victory last weekend. They're in form, they'll be motivated, and they'll be too good tomorrow. After last weekend's results, Doncaster East and Don Vale becomes the match of the round in Division 2 tomorrow, Dan. Both of these 2 teams will be keen to sneak into that top 4. Well, Don Vale's already in the top 4, but Doncaster East will look to change that.
Yeah, huge crunch game for both sides coming into the second half of the season. 5th versus 4th. Don Vale set a win clear of Doncaster East, of course, and these 2 sides drew last time, so very interesting facts there. More of the pressure lies with Doncaster East. They need to keep their win-loss ratio in the positive, and a loss will see them slip into the negative. But both sides have been in very good form, especially last week. Don Vale able to contain that dangerous trio of Doncaster Sharks in Batista, Anarkis, Limachese, and Doncaster East defeating Bayswater, moving up to 5th to stay in the finals race. And speaking of finals, this is a mini-final. Big games are all about standing up when it counts the most, and I've felt Doncaster East have been able to do that pretty well this season. Players like Ayubi, Daniel Mead, Parthenides, Papa Constantino and Whitty have all figured in their best several times and got the job done for them. I expect more of the same tomorrow afternoon. Doncaster East to win.
Most people would know around the EFL that I've got a little bit of a soft spot for Doncaster East, but I'm actually really tipping these guys with my head. I've got a good feeling about the Lions tomorrow. As you said, some great players there, Dan. Tim Whitty's one guy who's really stood up this season. Very courageous player. Looking forward to seeing how he goes, particularly towards the business end of the season. Lions for mine to cause a bit of an upset at Zerbies. I wouldn't want to be the Mulgrave Lions tomorrow, Peter Baird, because they run into a Montrose side who lost to Roval last weekend and will be out for revenge.
They were knocked off their perch at the top of the second division EFL ladder last week, were the Demons. They come up against a Lions team who haven't had a win yet for this year. It's not going to happen this week, Ben Waterworth. The Lions have conceded the most points out of any team in Division 2. Montrose have kicked the most. Conversely, Montrose have conceded the least number of points against them, and Mulgrave have kicked the least 4. So 2 contrasting statistics to take into this game. I can see this one getting very, very nasty out there at Montrose Reserve. The Demons will be looking to bounce back. Dean Stephen was in great form last week for Montrose despite the loss. Adam Cook, he was fantastic, marking a lot that went down there. Mulgrave, though, who knows when their first win's going to come for the year. I don't think it's going to be this week. Tim Knowles has been fantastic for them, having been named in their best 10 of their 11 games this year. Dean Siakoulis and Rob Edwards have been fantastic as well. Unfortunately for the Lions, it's been too little. They're not going to get up over the line against Montrose. The Demons are just too strong.
You've got to feel a little bit sorry for the Lions. They went so close last weekend against Upper Ferntree Gully. They've been close yet no cigar in a number of games this year. You've got to love the form of Tim Knowles. He's going to be a star, possibly an AFL recruit. You just never know. But as you said, they run into Montrose at a pretty ordinary time. Montrose for mine. Very, very interesting game out at Mount Waverley Reserve tomorrow, Dan Cencic, because the Waverley Blues take on Upper Ferntree Gully, with the latter not being very convincing over the past month or so.
Yeah, 8th versus 7th on the ladder, these two sides, and Upper got the job done against Mulgrave last weekend, who were tipped to cause an upset. But the Waverley Blues, don't forget them, they more than held their own for 2.5 quarters last week against a very good side in Mooroolbark, who are of course now on top of the ladder. So the Waverley Blues may be in 8th spot and won only 3 games, but they've been threatening most of the year through patches of good form that they've shown. Great win against Doncaster a few weeks ago, and we know they've got a bit of talent in their side. And going further back, they beat Donvale and Mulgrave. They've hit form and won games all in this last 5 or so week patch, and 3 very dangerous players to them have been all consistent performers throughout their winning games this season. Harley, Hartfield and Marnie have been fantastic for them. But Upper Ferntree Gully have hit a little bit of a form slump, losing by some pretty hefty margins, albeit to great sides. But on that basis, this is one they really need to win, and we'll get back on track. Upper Ferntree Gully should win, with Matthew Petraka in absolutely outstanding form, named in the best 3 times, kicking 27 goals from 11 matches so far this year. Kings for mine.
I don't know, Dan, I've got a sneaky suspicion about the Waverley Blues this weekend. They've been more than competitive throughout the season. Upper Ferntree Gully, the opposite to that over recent times. I've got out there at Mount Waverley Reserve with Marnie, Harley, Hartfield, all in pretty good form. Mitch Hayes, we know how good he is. I think the Blues for mine, just a bit of a hunch. It will be a green fiesta at Bayswater Oval tomorrow as Bayswater host Mooroolbark, 2 of the big boys. But Mooroolbark is the biggest of them all as they sit on top of the Division 2 ladder now, Peter Baird.
Not only a green fest, but a green and gold fest out there at Bayswater Oval. Mooroolbark have now moved to the top of the Division 2 ladder. They're ripe for the picking. This game could be a bit of an upset. Don't say I didn't tell you so come tomorrow afternoon. I've just got a feeling about Bayswater. They were disappointing last week. They went down by 10 points to Doncaster East at their own home ground at Bayswater Oval. They have the opportunity to make amends against the top of the table Mooroolbark Mustangs this week. To do that, though, they're going to need to shut down Mike Smith. I'll go so far as to say he's the best player going around in Division 2 at the moment. He's been in fantastic form this year. He gives them plenty of drive through the midfield. His core strength is just unbelievable. They've got the big kid up forward, Kid Talevsky. He kicked 7 last week in their 53-point demolition of the Waverley Blues. Bayswater, they need a way to try and shut down Mike Smith's influence through the middle, and I reckon they've got the man to do it. Joel Galvin might just hurt Mooroolbark just as much going the other way. Up forward, Brent James giving them a big target, moving from fullback up to their forward line, and with the small Wayne McInerney at their feet, they may have the lineup that might trouble Mooroolbark a little bit. Hayden Schroeder's having a great year for them as well. I've just got a feeling that Bayswater might take it all the way up to Mooroolbark. I'm going to tip an upset. The team that's sitting on top of the ladder has been knocked off its perch 3 times this year. I reckon it might happen again this week. The Waters for mine.
You mount a very, very good case there, Peter Baird. You've almost convinced me to tip Bayswater. They have got some fantastic players there. Joel Galvin possibly could hurt them the other way, but I just can't go past Mooroolbark. They're now on top of the Division 2 ladder, and I think they'll enjoy being on top. I think they'll enjoy being the hunted as well. With Kid Talevsky in pretty good form, Mustangs for mine, but in a very close encounter. Division 2 done and dusted. It's now time to move on to the big boys of Division 1. And let's start with a very interesting game. Scoresby taking on Croydon Dan, with the Blues getting their first victory of season 2012 last weekend. But Scoresby's win was just as impressive over Knox.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Both sides very impressive last weekend. Scoresby did what they had to do by defeating Knox comfortably to keep themselves entrenched in that Division 1 ladder logjam, and Croydon surprised us all by defeating South Croydon by 50 points. And look, last week has been what the Blues have been crying out for all season long. A spread of goal kickers and contributors right across the field. Kimpton really stood up and kicked 3. Ficarelli was brilliant across that centre line, and Martin really turned it on. The challenge for Croydon this week is to back up their performance this week against a very, very good side. They've clearly got the ability to play a clean, attacking brand of footy. It's all a matter of bringing their A game on a weekly basis. Scoresby have won 3 convincing matches in a row since they were really unlucky to go down in 3 successive weeks by close margins earlier in the year to Noble Park, Lilydale and Baldwin. But they've really turned their season around when it looked like they were at the crossroads as a team, and good sides find a way to dig themselves out of a hole, and the Pies have done just that. Players like the Hogels, Kirby McConnell, Warby have all led the charge across these last few weeks to ensure they figure into the action come September. Too much quality for Scoresby. Christopher Hogel in fantastic form with 30 goals for the season. I think Scoresby in a canter.
I heard it was a pretty big party out there at Hughes Park following Croydon's victory last weekend. Darryl Grant could not wipe the smile off his face, of course, the Croydon president, but I don't think he'll have such a big smile come tomorrow night because Scoresby are starting to make that charge towards the top of the Division 1 ladder, and I think they'll continue that charge with a good win tomorrow. I saw the Norwood club notes come in during the week, Peter Baird, and this was dubbed Norwood's most important game in its EFL history. They now sit second. They take on a first-place Baldwin tomorrow. Can they do it? Can they match it with the big boys?
Does it get any better than this, Ben Waterworth? 1 versus 2 in Division 1. The two teams that are clearly ladder leaders at the moment in Division 1. It's going to be a mouth-watering contest out there at Mullum Reserve. We went out earlier in the year and watched this match-up at Baldwin Park when Norwood took on Baldwin, but unfortunately after matching it with them for most of the day, were blown out of the water in the last quarter. Coach Kevin Tiboldi took away from that game that his side was able to match it with Baldwin. If I was trying to mount a case for the Norsemen before last week, I would have said that John O'Wynn, their big ruckman, might be the area where they could get on top. But with the return of Nick Smith to Baldwin last week, he's a huge in and he will even that ledger up without a shadow of a doubt. I really like the way the Norsemen have been playing down back with the 2 Johnson boys. Shane Clayton's been good through the middle and Brett English has given them a bit up forward. But you can't deny Baldwin. Rod Crow's led a very rock-solid defence. Ben Harris has been fantastic, and Shane Tregear's left foot from the wing has been pinpoint delivering the ball into their forward line. Ryan McMahon's been a dynamo through their midfield, as has Reddy Gilchrist and Charlie Hendry. I can't go past Baldwin. It might be D-Day for the Norsemen and their most important game they've had in their history, but I think Baldwin will come away with the points.
I really want to tip Norwood. I think they're ready to take it up to a side like Baldwin. Fantastic article in the Eastern Footballer tomorrow, Dan, by your good self, saying talking about the rise of Norwood. So make sure you read that one. I don't think they'll be able to get the chocolates tomorrow, though. A bit more class, a bit more experience from Baldwin might get them over the line, but it should be a great contest. 2 sides who you've seen plenty of over the past couple of years, Dan, is Blackburn and East Burwood. 2 of the most disappointing sides, I think it's fair to say, in season 2012 to date.
Yeah, and they've both been very disappointing in season 2012 for a while now. 10 versus 8th on the ladder. East Burwood have really slid down the ladder in the last couple of months. It's going to be a tough ask to make the finals off the back of what both sides have served up the last week. Blackburn had a heavy loss to Norwood, and East Burwood had suffered a big defeat from Lilydale. One of Blackburn's main problems this season is they haven't been able to kick big scores to get them over the line. They're ranked second last for scores for, and it has really cost them in the games. East Burwood, conversely, are ranked third offensively in Division 1, and their ability to extract goals from beyond those in the forward 50 has been a huge positive for them amidst some very disappointing results. I'm talking about players like Fior, Anthony Mariani, Henshaw, and of course Gribben. Gribben can play that swingman type of game which makes him very hard to match up on. I feel the Rams will find it tough to make the finals, but they can still garner a lot out of season 2012. East Burwood too strong, should win by about 4 goals.
East Burwood are certainly due for a victory, and if they want any chance of making the top 5 this season, they simply need to win this game. Away from home against a Blackburn side that should be pretty competitive tomorrow, I think the Rams will be able to get up. Feathers are sure to fly of the Falcon variety tomorrow, Peter Baird, as Knox take on Lilydale. It's so big that it's going to be our Radio Eastern game of the day. Make sure you tune into EFL Game Day from 1 till 6 p.m. on 98.1 Radio Eastern, or of course streaming on efl.org.au.
Yeah, the red and black Falcons of Knox taking on the yellow and blue Falcons of Lilydale. This is going to be a ripper contest. As you said, we will be calling it live on 98.1 Radio Eastern. I can't wait to get out there. Lilydale, earlier in the year, they were very reliant upon Nathan O'Keefe to kick a big bag to get them over the line. Last week, though, they had 11 individual goal kickers as they defeated East Burwood by 66 points. Their most impressive display of the year, probably other aside than when they knocked off Scoresby out at the LSO. I don't know whether or not they're the same side on the road away from Lilydale, though. And that's the worry as they come up against a Knox side who have now fallen 2 games behind outside the top 5. They need to start to get things together and get them together in a hurry if they're going to play in finals action for the second year in a row. The 2 Aiello boys were great for Knox last week. Lucas Bakes has been serviceable all year. Luke Williams and Jacob Castricum have been great as well. I don't know, I just think this is D-Day for Johnny Knight and his boys from Knox. They need to bounce back with the spotlight of the radio game on them at their home ground at Knox Gardens Reserve. I just think Knox will have a little bit too much to play for. This is the last chance saloon in traditional Friday preview style for the Knox Falcons. They have to get up in this one, so I'm going to tip Knox.
You're right, Pete. This is a game that Knox simply cannot afford to lose. They're on the brink of pushing up into that top 5, and if they want to play finals this year, this is a game they simply have to win. Lilydale, extremely impressive last weekend, but unfortunately, I think Knox will want to bounce back tomorrow, and they'll be able to get 4 points. South Croydon host a Vermont side who is looking very, very sexy at the moment, Dan Cencic. They are in fantastic form, especially after last weekend's victory over Noble Park.
Sexy is the perfect word to describe them, Ben. Vermont have shown brilliant form over the last few weeks. In fact, similar footy to what they were playing during their premiership years. A massive come from behind last week against one of the competition's heavyweight sides in Noble Park was brilliant for them, with players like Barry Murphy, Nick Mendez, Robbie Ross, Ryan Mullett and Carmody all named in the best, so the backs, the forwards and the midfielders all working very well together. Carmody in particular last week was damaging with 5 goals and will be very hard to match up on. The win last week to Vermont netted them 5 places on the ladder, and only 1 win separates Vermont and 3 other clubs from the top of the ladder. So we talk about a logjam between 3rd and 5th. Scoresby, Noble Park and Vermont all in that logjam, of course. It makes this game all the more important for Vermont, and it's too much of an important game to drop. I feel the spread of goal kicks that Vermont have will give the South Croydon defenders nightmares. South Croydon have conceded the most scores against this season in Division 1 with 1,001 points. Vermont by plenty.
Throughout the season, it's been the more experienced players like Ross and Mullett and Millhouse who have been consistently named the best, but great to see Xavier Barry Murphy named in the best against a quality side like Noble Park last weekend. I think they'll continue their good form, the Eagles. They'll win tomorrow. And the final game in Division 1 is East Ringwood against Noble Park. Earlier on in the season, Peter Baird, East Ringwood knocked off Noble Park.
They did. It was probably their biggest win for the year to that point. Since then, though, East Ringwood's form hasn't been great. Noble Park, they started to get things together, but they were surprised last week by a Vermont side, as Dan said, that overran them in the last quarter. They'll be bleeding from that loss, and they'll be looking to go roo hunting tomorrow afternoon to knock off East Ringwood. I just like Noble Park's mix at the moment. The young kids they've brought into the side this year, guys like Wilkinson and Tyson Mitchum have been great. They've really stood up to try and fill the void where they've had some major injuries at Noble Park. East Ringwood, though, they haven't been without injuries themselves. They've probably crippled their year after they were started in fantastic form. I just think Noble Park are going to be too strong. East Ringwood have been gallant, and I really respect the way they've battled on despite having a number of injuries, but I just think Noble Park, they're too good a side to drop 2 games in a row. I can't see it happening. I'm sticking with the Bulls.
I can't see it happening either, Pete. I think Noble Park's rifles will be loaded, and their hunting of roos will go down very, very well tomorrow. Noble Park for mine. Well, there you have it. All 22 games across the Eastern Football League tomorrow. Done and dusted. In-depth analysis at its absolute best. Make sure you tune in to 98.1 Radio Eastern or stay here on www.efl.org.au to hear EFL Game Day's live broadcast of the Knox and Lilydale clash. Should be a fantastic game of Division 1 football, and feathers are sure to fly.
And make sure you tune in to EFL Sunday from 10 a.m. to hear from the winning coaches all across the Eastern Football League. Proudly sponsored by Akira Urgent Care, Australia's first medical emergency walk-in clinic. Don't forget, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Sunday.
And, of course, for that light-hearted look at the Eastern Football League, the Huddle will be back next Wednesday night between 6 and 7 p.m. on 98.1 Radio Eastern. We'll have a club here in Club Corner. We'll be talking about some of the best burgers in the EFL. For the best light-hearted view of the Eastern Football League, it's the Huddle on 98.1 Radio Eastern on Wednesday night.
I've thoroughly enjoyed going through all the games across the Eastern Football League tomorrow. Should be a great round, so make sure you get out there and go local for your football. Thanks to Peter. Thanks to Dan for another great analysis of what's going to happen tomorrow. That's it. We're done for another edition of the Friday Preview. Make sure you tune in next week. And as a wise man once said, Stick a fork in us, we're done.